Miami blew another fourth quarter lead and struggled to score in overtime versus Jalen Brunson and the Knicks, and one particular Heat player was the main culprit. We'll tell you who it was and what went wrong on tonight's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Recording this on a Sunday night after the Heat blew a 19-point lead, lost to the Knicks in overtime, David. Everything seemed like it was going great. In the first half, Kel'el Ware was dunking all over the place. Bam Adebayo looked great and looked like he was the best player on the court. Spo was using challenges early in this game. The Heat scored 62 points in the first half, but then they were outscored 71-50 in the second half and OT. They lose the game. And I just thought down the stretch they got away from what worked in this one. Credit to the Knicks defense. They tightened up, but I still thought the Heat could have done a lot more, and they're going to have a lot of regrets when they look at the film of this one, I think.
Not a lot of time for them to turn it around either. They've got a game on Monday night, so they'll review whatever film I guess they can and try to learn something from it. But you're absolutely right. They could have adjusted over the course of the fourth quarter in particular. Maybe go with a different rotation. We'll answer some questions about that because some people criticized Eric Spoelstra with some of the choices that he made. But I think honestly, what I saw was the Knicks tightening their defense pretty significantly. I think they switched OG Anunoby onto Tyler Herro and made things really difficult for him. And Tyler really struggled in the second half. I think he was 3 of 10 overall between the fourth quarter and overtime periods. He just couldn't find his shot, and they just had somebody draped all over him, making things a lot more difficult for him. And he was unable to kind of get the spacing that he wanted to. But to your overall point, I think going to Ware a lot more often probably would have helped, because I think he was so dominant in the first half and they just seemed to go away from him. They went with Terry Rozier, inserted him into the rotation, and he struggled mightily. He was just as bad as ever. He just can't seem to get anything effectively done for Miami, and they went with a small ball lineup and it just didn't seem to work. And I don't know what happened, and they just couldn't seem to get easy looks. Like their field goal attempts were down. Their field goal percentage was significantly down. And whatever open looks that they had in their first half, when they were so dominant offensively, again, building a 19-point lead, the just offense seemed completely different in the second half than what we had seen earlier in the game.
Yeah, and you know, I'm watching the broadcast and they kept talking about how in that first half, oh, this is so un-Knicks-like, this is so un-Tom Thibodeau-like to be this bad defensively. No, it's not. Not this year. The Knicks stink on defense this season. That was more of what was regular for them in the first half.
This is the style of play.
Yeah,
and this is what they do, right? They have Jalen Brunson heroics in the fourth quarter, and that's how they win games. And that was the recipe today. They just do just enough to kind of stay there. And in today's three-point shot and everything else, and the way he's able to draw fouls, it's usually enough to kind of give them an advantage. And certainly they took advantage of it today against Miami.
Yeah, and this was another one of those games where the shot selection is going to be scrutinized, and you know, the shot selection of specific players are going to be scrutinized, and we'll talk about Tyler Herro here in a second. But
yeah,
you also just look at the overall team shot charts, and the Knicks took 44 three-pointers, and Miami took 35. Yep. And this was a little reminiscent of last year. The Heat shot 54% overall.
Yeah.
The Knicks shot 48% overall. You know, you look at just that and you say, well, the Knicks, the Heat probably should have won this game. But then the Knicks, they just did more from beyond the arc, and threes are worth more than two, and the math problem. And it felt a little bit like last season when Miami had a bunch of mid-range shots going and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, the other team, they just take more threes, they make more threes. And in a game that goes to overtime, when they're taking shots that are worth one more point per possession, it just kind of felt like it caught up to Miami, in other words. But to zoom out a little bit even more, the Heat just keep blowing these double-digit leads. They keep blowing these late-game leads. And I think, David, honest, and maybe it's just recency bias. Maybe it's just because literally the game just finished, and maybe I'm just feeling it right now. I think this is probably the worst blown double-digit lead of the season for Miami because again, just when it felt like the Heat were building something, they had a chance to get a big win against the team third in the standings in the Eastern Conference, a rival against the Knicks.
Right.
A chance to win their third game in a row for the first time since January 11th.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And they blow a 19-point lead. And it's just one of those, another instance this season where it felt like they were taking steps forward only to stumble several steps backwards.
I mean, this is what bad teams do. And I hate to sound so negative about this group, but, they're able to do things in the first half because they've got the momentum. They're a little bit more relaxed. But good teams figure out how to do things differently in the second half to put them in a chance to win. Bad teams usually squander whatever momentum they have. We've seen this with the Brooklyn Nets. We've seen this with the Washington Wizards, where Jordan Poole is able to keep that Wizards team going and have them neck and neck with a superior opponent for 3 quarters. And then what happens? Well, the Wizards themselves out of the contention in the fourth quarter. This is what happens with the Heat as well. I will argue and say that blown lead against the Orlando Magic was probably the worst one of the season, where they only scored 3 points or whatever it was, something horrific. But this was, to your point, I agree, a really bad loss because you want to continue to build momentum. You're missing Jaime Jaquez, you're missing Andrew Wiggins, and you're still up 19 points against a good Knicks team. And it should be enough. You've got some kind of a recipe for success, and you can't hold on to it. You let it slip through your fingers.
Yeah,
you go away from doing what's right.
It's not the worst loss. So you're probably right, but it's the most painful one because you had a chance to beat the Knicks.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's like the Magic. It's like, who at the end of the day, who cares? It's the Magic. This was the Knicks. This is like that. This one was just, this would have been a statement win among statement wins. And what would have been your takeaway? When we watch these games, we're working on, okay, what's the takeaway in the case of a win? And when they were winning this game, my major takeaway, and I had it written down, was everybody that always is pining for Bam Adebayo be the best player on the court and dominate.
Yep.
They got that in this game. When the Heat were winning, Bam was the best player on the floor. He was better than Jalen Brunson. He was better than Karl-Anthony Towns, 2 guys who are probably going to make all NBA teams this year. Bam was the best player on the floor on both ends. He was dominant in this game. And then obviously they lose this game. And that can no longer be my takeaway. But I do think that the Heat lost this game. If you're going to try to pinpoint a moment, where did it all go wrong? I think the Heat lost this game in the final 6 minutes of the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
To expect them to win by 19 was never going to be real. The Knicks are too good, right? Yeah. And to your point, Jalen Brunson, he takes over. This is what they do. But they lost this game in the final 6 minutes of the fourth quarter when Bam went without a field goal attempt. His last field goal attempt was 6 minutes and 11 seconds in regulation. He got fouled on a field goal attempt. That was his last shot attempt from the floor until overtime. And then he made the first 2 baskets for Miami in overtime.
Yep.
But it should have never gotten to that point. And again, credit the Knicks. They did a good job of trying to take the ball out of Bam's hands and all that stuff. But if you're the Heat, you got to get the ball to your best player. There's no excuse for it.
You hate to pin it on any one player, but I mean, you texted me something and it was pretty astute at the time, and it wound up proving even more so as the game progressed. Tyler Herro was shooting the Heat out of this game, and he was just trying to overcompensate for all of his struggles, for the way that they were defending him. And there were a number of shots there where this is, even for Tyler, who loves to get that kind of rhythm and momentum, were very un-Tyler-like. There was a shot where he pulled up, didn't need to. There was a shot towards the end of the game where he tried to win it, and that was a bad shot. In overtime, he's forcing the issue. Like, these were shots that he does typically not take, as much as he tries to get himself into that kind of shooting rhythm. But it was just a really bad look for him to struggle as much as he did. I think he went 3 of 15 in total in the second half in overtime.
Yeah,
that's not going to.
In the fourth quarter, Tyler Herro 5 shot attempts, Duncan Robinson 5 shot attempts, Terry Rozier 3 shot attempts, Bam Adebayo 2 shot attempts in the fourth quarter. So that's not the recipe you're looking for. I don't know that I agree with you about that final shot attempt by Tyler Herro, though, at the end of regulation. I think it was an okay look, but let's put a pin in that conversation for now. We got a lot more to talk about in terms of Tyler Herro's up and down game, and Miami's shot selection problem in general. We're going to do that next year on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on it with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you missed the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, not from Miami side of things, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. FanDuel, their live betting feature is so easy to use. It keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether you're backing your team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, you never feel like you're missing a chance. Plus, the app is easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com and join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team is a free daily newsletter introducing the Locked On Heat newsletter, one stop for ultimate Heat and league coverage with local analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shearer, and Locked On fantasy basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. You're reading that FanDuel read there, David, and you mentioned the fourth quarter comebacks. I mean, might as well make some money on this Heat season, right? Start betting every fourth quarter. If the Heat are winning, just put that fourth quarter money line on there or the fourth quarter spread. Bet on the other team. Might as well make some money on this season. They're proving that it's kind of guaranteed money.
The win against the Indiana Pacers was kind of an aberration there because that was another game where that they could have blown. And by the way, I just want to say thank you to everybody who dropped by the Taurus on Friday night for our second watch party there, third watch party overall. We are now 3-0 in watch parties. It's been great. Fantastic showing. Just want to shout out Myron, who was there, Ed, Miguel and his lovely wife, Crystal. They are always there supporting us. We love so many of you all that came out there to watch the game with us. Alejandro, the photographer. It was great to talk to all these people. So many people that we got a chance to kind of schmooze with over the course of the game. And again, a Heat victory. So fantastic. And we really appreciate it. We'll be doing a lot more of these in the future.
Great shout out. And thanks again to Juan from Ariete Group for hosting us and making a great situation for us there. Tyler Herro, not as great as a situation. Weird game. Kind of throwback Tyler Herro, and not in a good way. You know what I mean? 22 points, 7 assists. Doesn't look bad. But then you look at the box score a little bit more. 8 for 24 overall. 2 for 11 from three-point range. I think he missed his first 8 or 9 from three. A bad 8-second violation late in this game with absolutely no reason. A total unforced error. Some questionable shot choices that we'll get to here in a second. But you had mentioned that last shot at the end of regulation. And I saw this kind of split on social media. Some people liked it, some people didn't. I didn't really have a problem with it. He has a chance to win the game. He takes the clock all the way down at the end of regulation. Gets Miles McBride a matchup. He scored a big bucket against McBride a couple possessions before that. That's the matchup you're looking for. It's you don't really see teams run plays in that scenario because you want the ball in your trusted ball handler's hands, and you want that player to be able to take the clock down. When you run plays, it's harder to kind of control the shot clock and control the clock in general. So the fact that they just got Herro on the matchup that they wanted and ISO'd him, and he got into his mid-range kind of pocket, I didn't mind it that much. Could they have gotten Bam the ball? Yeah, sure. To me, the bigger sin was not getting Bam the ball at all in the last 6 minutes than that one possession where Tyler had the shot to potentially win the game in an isolation situation with like 4 seconds left.
Should never come down to one shot. I mean, you should have been able to have your offense run much more smoothly. They were outscored by 6 in the fourth quarter, but I mean, they were outscored by 17 overall in the second half. And that's your game right there. Like if you can't get your offense going and you can't do what was so effective in the first half. I mean, again, credit to the Knicks. They're not taking anything away from them, but I think we've seen this from Miami far too often to say that it was just what the Knicks were able to do. Miami they change over the course of the game and they just don't maintain the pressure as effectively. Their defense wasn't as good in the second half, and their offense was just woeful. Look, the shot selection, I get your point. I would have liked for him to have been able to get a little closer to the basket rather than take that kind of 19-foot fadeaway. it just didn't seem like the ideal shot in that scenario. And we've seen him hit better shots than that. And I think this year's version of Tyler is much more likely to get closer to the painted area and be able to put up a floater or something like that. But I think he also waited a little bit too long, because it's not like he's probably not going to turn the ball over. And you don't necessarily want a possession where he's just dribbling the ball and kind of pounding it into the court and not getting a good shot. But at the same time, if you go to work maybe a second or two earlier, you might be able to cross McBride over and see if you can create a little space that
maybe
way.
Get fouled.
Instead, he wound up settling. Yeah, maybe getting fouled. Instead, he winds up kind of settling and saying, no, shot clock's expiring. I've already waited 19 seconds. Let me go ahead and take this shot here. I don't know. I think that's kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
It's a fair critique. The shot selection overall is going to be a talking point coming out of this game. I thought Miami's shot selection was pretty bad. And the crazy part was it was so good in the first half. Like, they were getting Kel'el Ware the ball, they were getting Bam the ball, they were getting all the looks that they wanted, and the Knicks were helping them by turning the ball over a bunch in the first half, and so it sped up Miami's offense, got them in the full court. Their half court offense was just kind of miserable the entire game for the most part. And the craziest part about this game, David, is I don't think you would ever guess it having watched this. The Knicks ended up outscoring Miami in the paint, 58-56. And that was such a huge advantage for Miami in the first half of this game. I mean, this was just, you talk about tale of two halves. This was about as big as it gets in that regard.
Did you ever feel comfortable watching that first half lead, though? Did you ever like, oh, no, this is it. Miami's going to cruise?
Yeah, I did. I got suckered in. I don't know about you, but I got suckered in. I was waiting for the text from you, because we have a tradition around here, I suppose, that every time the Heat they go up by double digits, you'll text me, this one's going to hurt.
Yes.
And I never got that text from you.
I did.
So I thought we were good.
I sent it late. I sent it late. I sent it late. This one's going to sting. And it did. It does.
Oh, you did send it to me at 8:09 p.m. Yeah, so it was like that was right at the beginning.
Already in the second half. I was a little bit more confident, and I thought there was at least a chance Miami would be able to do just enough. And then even as I was sending it, I think they wound up, like, to their credit, New York came back. I think they had never held the lead at any point during the game. And then they wound up either tying the game or being just like a 1 point under Miami. And then Miami wound up going on a nice run, creating a little bit of a cushion where they were up 7 midway through the fourth quarter. You're thinking, okay, this is enough. No, it was not enough. And Jalen Brunson does what he does. OG Anunoby hit some big shots. And Miami, as you pointed out, just got away from their offense. No Bam Adebayo, no Kel'el Ware. And that was a surprising one, too. I did text you that. I was wondering why Ware wasn't in the game. And I know we've got some questions about that we'll answer in the next segment. But that was a head scratcher, because he had been so effective. It seemed like that was a legitimate weapon, because Karl-Anthony Towns, not a great defender. Mitchell Robinson, not a great defender. And I think Ware could have been able to take advantage of that a little bit more effectively, and it just didn't happen. I'm not sure exactly what Spo was thinking. This was
turnovers in the second half also. It again, tale of two halves, where the Knicks were handing the ball to the Heat in the first half, and the Heat were taking advantage, and the Heat were just sort of handing the ball to the Knicks in the second half, and they were taking advantage too. I don't know. And before we get out of this segment, can I just complain about one thing really quick?
Is it Knicks fans at the Kaseya Center? Because you can complain about that all day long.
Oh, well, what's the point of that? I mean, that's just going to happen. But
I know.
I didn't have a big problem with the officiating in this game. I thought they mostly just let them play. And there were some questionable non-calls. I'd rather have the non-calls on both sides than way too many calls where the officials kind of take over the game. They did not. Agreed. My only biggest problem with the officiating was one of the referees just got in Davion Mitchell's way after a steal there. But that was, again, you can live with that. That happens every once in a while. They didn't do it on purpose, obviously. Yeah. So I'm okay with just letting them play. They didn't feel like they took control of the game. But I will say this, if I can complain.
Yes.
Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns spent 90% of their time on the floor complaining about the calls and the non-calls. If it's clear that the officials are not calling anything on both sides, just live with it. Can we live in a world where you just have 15 free throw attempts per team? I actually love the pace of this game for the most part.
Towns complains a lot, and I think they were doing a good job of letting both of them be physical with one another. Both Bam and Karl, they were kind of both physical, and they were like, nope, you guys are the Bulls out there. Go ahead and make it happen. And
Davion Mitchell calling out Brunson for the flopping. I love that.
like Brunson, I do like Jalen Brunson's
Sure,
style overall
of
and
course.
his big shot ability down the
Mhm.
stretch. Like that is a clutch player. But man, his throwing his head back constantly, diving to the floor, and then saying, "What? I didn't get a call." It's like, no, dude, you just slipped, you tripped, whatever, you fell down. Like it happens. It's not necessarily a foul.
He's the best at
I
it since
mean,
Harden.
yes, no
It's
doubt
very
about it. He
Harden-esque,
is,
like the head snap back. I mean, that's
yes,
Harden 101.
yeah. He's very good at drawing those fouls. But again, like the fouls are one thing, and he got a couple calls maybe that he probably shouldn't have. But aside from that, like I mean, he was just taking like Haywood Highsmith, I think, did a better job defending him than Davion
Mm.
Mitchell.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
despite that, I think he was still able to get some tough shots down the stretch in the fourth quarter and overtime. Like he had a fadeaway jumper over Haywood, and Haywood clearly has a size advantage and a strength advantage, and it doesn't bother Brunson at all. His shot making ability is among the best in the league.
Yeah, I mean, it's why the Knicks are where they've been the last couple of years. Is because they have a shot maker like Jalen Brunson, and
No
the
doubt.
Heat don't really have that kind of player. They don't
No, they
have that kind
don't.
of player. Kel'el Ware played great in this one, but he wasn't involved much late in this game. You and I both think it was a mistake. We're going to talk about that next here on Lockdown Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, get ready. They swoosh, you save. Thanks to Dash Pass. Every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you score a huge deal the next day. Hey, Steph Curry, the guy you used to cover, he just did this a couple days ago. He dropped 56 points in a win over the Orlando Magic. He was phenomenal in that game. Well, guess what? When a player like Steph or anybody else scores 50 or more in a game during the 24-25 NBA regular season, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order up to $10 off the next day from noon to midnight. Let's say you're craving a game day feast. You want to have some folks over, watch the big game with you. Well, after an epic 15-point performance, you can celebrate by ordering wings, pizza, burgers, whatever you want from your favorite spot delivered straight to your door. Maybe you've got some late night cravings or you want lunch on the go. Well, if you need a quick and easy lunch the next day with Dash Pass, you get your favorite meals with $0 delivery fees and reduced service fees. Plus, now you save even more with this exclusive NBA offer. Sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save. When any player scores 50 or more in a game, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order the next day, up to $10 off. Just use the promo code NBA50 from noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms do apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The best way to support the show. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. Let's jump into some of the listener questions. Thanks to the Locked On Heat Insider community for sending those questions in. If you want to join, you can do so with the link in the show notes. Antonio writes in, why didn't Eric Spoelstra play Ware late in the fourth quarter? His presence was clearly felt throughout the game. Another Locked On Heat Insider writes in, why does Spo keep going away from the two big lineup throughout the game? He did the same thing against the Pacers. It seems the lead we had fell apart when we went small, played Bam and Anderson together. What does he see that I'm not seeing? David, Kel'el Ware played 3 seconds in the fourth quarter just for a defensive possession late in the game. I don't get it. I don't get it. This is not even an anti-Terry Rozier thing. Obviously, it wasn't a great Rozier game. It wasn't a great game for Rozier anyway, but that's just it's what we expect these days. And no Andrew Wiggins, no Jaime Jaquez. Like Spo was just short on options. But
Yeah.
even still, why not play your two big lineup that was so good and created an advantage for you early in this game? Why not go to them down the stretch? I can't figure it out.
I don't either. I don't think New York adjusted. I don't think they did anything. And even if they had, like, I mean, I know they were getting their guards going and Adebayo was having a bigger second half. But I mean, Spo has said this numerous times to us. Like, it's all about setting your tempo, your tone. You want to create the advantage for yourself. You want to force your opponent to make the adjustment, not the other way around. And they had the advantage in that first half. They had Ware. He was the difference maker. Like Tyler, for as much as he struggled offensively with his scoring, he was great at finding the big around
Great
the
point.
basket. Like he was great in pick and roll, something we talked about in a recent episode. He was really effective at drawing multiple defenders and leaving a wide open Ware, setting him up perfectly for an easy lob dunk. I mean, I don't know how many lob dunks did he have in the first half, because it seemed like at least
5.
4 or 5.
Yeah.
He was phenomenal. And that's your advantage, and you just go away from it. And I don't I don't know. Again, maybe it was a matter of having an Adebayo onto Hero. Maybe it was different. Maybe they didn't have that advantage in pick and roll, and they felt like maybe it wouldn't have mattered to have him out there. You want to get your shooter going, but there were other options that they could have gone with, and instead of Rozier, but you still want to have Ware out there because he was a difference maker, and it was
on both ends, right? I mean, he was blocking shots. He was a lob threat.
4 block shots, yeah.
In a fourth quarter where you had such a hard time finding consistent offense, your most consistent offense was just throwing it up to Ware by the basket for so much of this game. If it wasn't Bam Adebayo kind of doing Bam Adebayo things, so I don't really understand it. So typically teams now will go small at the end of games. We just see that across the league because a lot of teams will play off of your center and they'll pack the paint and they'll pack the lane, and that can kind of grind your offense to a halt a little bit. But the Knicks were playing off of Haywood Highsmith. They were treating Haywood Highsmith like he was Kel'el Ware, and maybe you put Highsmith in there because you want his perimeter defense against Brunson. And I understand that. Yeah. But you could have taken, and so was it just a matter of, well, was it Highsmith or Ware? Because Spo maybe felt like he couldn't play both of them with Bam because then the spacing would be even more of a problem. I could understand that if that was the logic. But the problem with that logic is that the guy that you're also playing now, because Jaime is out and Wiggins is out, is Terry Rozier for 7 minutes in the fourth quarter, right? Alec Burks for 6 minutes. And I think it was an okay Burks game overall, but it was he had a third quarter spurt where he made 3 straight triples from the corner. That was really it for Burks. Besides that, he was not much of a factor. So I don't really get it. And plus Davion Mitchell was out there. So do you just feel like Mitchell, Ware, Adebayo, and Highsmith, is that maybe that's just not a viable closing lineup because it would just kill Miami's spacing? If that was the argument, I get it, but you still got to figure out a way for Ware to play more than one defensive possession in a situational situation.
And
like you got to
kind of supplement that. You supplement that with Duncan. I mean, that's great point. He's the guy, and he's been playing so well of late. Like I mean, just what was it? 2 of 6 tonight from 3-point range. Not a great night, perhaps, but I mean, again, he didn't really get a lot of opportunity. Should have probably played even more minutes.
And they were playing, and they were chasing him over every single screen. They made it hard for Duncan Robinson tonight, and so you still have that spacing, regardless of whether or not Duncan's making the shot. So
right.
Yeah,
plus, and that gives Ware the opportunity to dive to the rim too. If they're chasing him around, they're probably getting another defender off bounds or whatever.
And then we get back to what you were talking about with Tyler or even Duncan kind of finding him with lobs and stuff by the basket. Bam played 12 minutes in the fourth quarter. Maybe it's as simple as we just played our best center 12 minutes. But again, you start with Bam and Ware. You want to get them on the court together at the same time at some point. Andrew writes in, Tyler Herro definitely had a bad game. We really needed this win. It seems like we're destined to be the 8th seed and lose our pick, along with a first-round exit. Worst possible scenario. Bam needed the ball more late instead of Herro on the game winner in the fast break pull-up 3. More of a statement than a question, but the worst possible scenario part to me, what do you think? I mean, is that it? They're the 8th seed, so I suppose play-in tournament, make it out of the play-in tournament. Not as a 7th seed, though, but as an 8th seed. That and a first-round exit. I don't know if that's the worst case.
Is that how they lose their pick, though, by being in the 8th seed? Would that be?
Because it's top 4. Well, it's top 14 protected, so yeah, anything, if they make the playoffs, they'll lose the pick, or they keep. It gets kicked out, and then they would lose it. They lose their pick this year, but then they wouldn't lose it next year, and that's why I'm not sure it's the worst case scenario, because next year it would be unprotected, and who knows what next year is going to be. And then not only does it become unprotected next year, but then it kicks that 2027 Charlotte pick to 2028, also unprotected. So now you're a little naked in 2028 too. So I don't know that that's the worst possible scenario. I don't know what people expect. 7th seed, 8th seed, 6th seed, whatever. I don't know that this Heat team's winning a playoff round, but I'm okay with that. Again, we're talking about expectations post trading the face of the franchise. Like, making the playoffs still to me would be successful. I think that's an okay result.
Yeah, I think that was a consensus with everybody that we talked to. Like, it's good to get the kind of fan perspective, and we certainly did that on Friday night. And I think generally they still want this team to make the playoffs, and I think that's fairly representative of most of the fans. Like, there is a vocal minority that says, no, tank. That's not going to happen. They're too good to tank. They're too good to be an abysmal team. They're just going to be consistently mediocre. And unfortunately, that was the case today, where they just had they let victory slip through their fingers. They had it all there, and unfortunately just couldn't get it done. So I don't know. Is it the worst case scenario? No, I don't know that anything is a worst case scenario at this point. I think the whole kind of season has taken on similar tenor to last year, where it feels like just a lost season because you had to go through this drama with Jimmy, and then you're kind of dealing with trying to incorporate these new players, and there doesn't seem to be like any positive outcome. You're not going to be bad enough to get a top 5 pick in the draft. You're not going to be good enough to be a playoff contender. You're kind of just still in this middle ground. And so that's the unfortunate part of this season, is that it's just kind of, again, you're nowhere. And that's just not where you want to be as a franchise.
Monday night, Washington Wizards at home. Hopefully a chance to bounce back, even though it's on the second night of a back-to-back. But thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.